Sonic is a franchise that stirs a lot of strong emotions in people. On one hand, you've got... Wait, this isn't Crystal's butt. Ah! Crystal! I can explain this. She just, I can't explain this. It's been a rough ride for Sonic fans the last few decades. Ever since Sonic 06 shit the bed and Sega literally banned Sonic Team from making good games, forcing them to desperately scramble through random formulas for something that sticks and striking nothing but poop reservoirs. And I'm one of the nicer people towards the 3D Sonic games. I loved the adventure titles and even cut Shadow the Hedgehog a lot of slack, but the Storybook, Unleashed, Rise of Lyric, and Lost World games were such a maddening losing streak that the battered fanbase is starting to insist that 06 was good enough. Anyway, next on my 3D Sonic to-do list is Sonic Forces, another divisive game in the series. Is this one actually good, or is it just good by comparison? Because no, those are not the same thing. The game begins with Sonic running through Green Hill because Tails needs some help with Dr. Eggman. And I'm already getting some weird vibes from the gameplay. It feels like I can barely jump, and there's a new boosting mechanic that basically hurdles you through the entire stage, insta-killing everything in your path. Seriously, I charged invincible through most of this opening stage, barely having to touch the controller. Please tell me that their idea for reinventing the series wasn't strip all the game out of the game. Sonic comes across a city where Eggman is menacing Tails, who should be able to fight through this few goons on his own, and also a group of furry people. Wait, what? Okay, what friggin' planet is this game set on? Sonic Adventure 1 all the way through Unleashed took place on Earth, where Sonic and his friends were the only furries and everyone else was human. But now we're in a world of no humans, confusing the piss out of anybody who jumped aboard the series in the past 20 years. What the hell, man? Anyway, Sonic is confronted by a veritable Elite Four of his past villains. Chaos, Shadow, Metal Sonic, and that Zeddy guy whose name I would never have remembered without a reminder. Oh, honey, no. Zavok only appeared in a shit Wii U exclusive, and the few people who know who he is don't like him. Anyway, the League of Supervillains, and Zavok, are led by a mysterious floating dark figure named Infinite, and they all teleport around beating the crap out of Sonic until he's captured. While Tails just kind of stands off to the side watching. With Sonic out of the way, Dr. Eggman brutally conquers and enslaves the entire world through a black text screen. 6 months later, the world is completely under Eggman's oppressive rule except for a small resistance group led by Amy, Knuckles, Team Chaotix, and... Silver?! Silver's from the future? Specifically, the alternate reality future from Sonic 2006 that doesn't exist anymore. And that game ended with Silver never having traveled back in time in the first place. Silver is kind of the one character that really friggin' badly needs an explanation as to why he's here. Also, great to know that after so many years of adventures talking about how teamwork and friendship are the greatest powers of all, absolutely zero of Sonic's friends stepped up as capable of doing jack squat against Eggman. Whatever, the group is introduced to a new recruit that has joined the Resistance, and you are taken to a screen where, for the first time in the series, you get to create your own custom Sonic character. You select a species and a gender, color yourself however you want, get strapped with a gun and a grappling hook that mimics Sonic's homing attack, and you get sent off to fight alongside the rest of the Sonic cast. It's just too bad that customization kinda sucks ass. Like 3 hairstyles, the male and female models look nearly identical. You start the game with no inventory, running around in the nude, and even a restrictive number of species to pick from. Oh, what the hell? You can't make a fox! You can't make a bat either. Well, I guess a cat is close enough to a fox. I mean, not that I would want to make you mad. Not that I should care about making Rouge mad. Screw it, I'll pick a bird, pretend that I'm making a Blackwing monster for Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Raid Raptors may be more appropriate given the setting. As you play through the game, you unlock new cosmetics to customize your character, but by design, you're only actually going to care about a small handful of the items that you get. There's no store to buy what you actually want, you're stuck with whatever the game hands out. And you can't customize the colors of any of the cosmetics, so your character's going to look like a disaster the bulk of the time. And no matter how you design your character, you're mute and barely interact with the rest of the cast, your custom character kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, and you never really feel like they're a part of this universe. But hey, you get to play through the whole game as your own custom avatar. That sounds friggin' awesome, right? Saving the world falls to you because Sonic is out of action. You get to be the big hero of all creatures. Sonic gets rescued in the 4th level. Out of 30. You only actually use your avatar for 8 levels, plus 4 where you're partnered with Sonic to where your OC doesn't really do jack. Yeah, game's main selling point is completely hosed. Alright, as you'd expect, Forces is a platformer that, like Lost World before it, keeps cycling back and forth between a 2D and a 3D perspective. Except, unlike Lost World, a lot of the 3D levels in Forces are designed to where it feels like you barely do anything. There are enemies, barely. Your avatar has guns that plow through all of them in a second, and as I sit down to write this, I realize the vast bulk of the enemy types don't even attack you. The 3D levels tend to be so loaded down with non-stop boost pads, springs, rails, and homing attack grapple points carefully guiding you through the stage, it feels like you just blaze right through them, barely having to think. Not helped by the fact that Sonic's boost damn near warped through half the stage at a time. At least until the boost just randomly sends you falling to your death from a hazard that you had no way to see coming! The controls and physics aren't very good either. When you start moving, your character will walk for a few seconds and then take off running, and when running, it feels like you slide all over creation and can barely control where you're going. And the turning and jumping controls are so friggin' stiff, it feels like both barely work. My hand to God, this is true. There's a level where Sonic runs down a winding path. It's meant to just be a little filler bit while the characters babble some exposition. The path's turns are too sharp for Sonic to be physically capable of running down this path. You have to constantly stop and have him carefully tiptoe through this basic level geometry. There's a level where your avatar character has to fight a giant walker mech that's been marked as one of the hardest levels in the game. It's not because of the robot, it's because you can only just barely make these basic jumps over a few simple platforms because the jumping physics barely give you any height, distance, or control in midair. Oh, but Sonic and the bird species of Avatar can double jump. The double jump is useless. You get like no extra height and maybe a few centimeters of added distance. Thanks a pant load, you stupid game. Any level that actually includes platforming is guaranteed to suck out your lives. Is what I would say if this game had any actual lives. Even on the hard mode, which is the recommended difficulty by the way, there is no live system. You can die over and over and over with generous checkpoints. Literally, the worst that happens is a bad grade at the end of the stage. It's a profound lack of giving a shit. It's no wonder so many stages damn near literally carry you to the exit, so the terrible physics have as little influence as possible. And if you think I'm over-exaggerating just how little actual game is in this game, take a look at the mission listing that you can pull up. You see those completion times off to the side? You see how none of them go over 4 minutes? You see how most of the levels aren't even 2 or 3 minutes long? That's not me speedrunning. There are barely levels here. The game is barely even 4 hours long, if that, and I think a solid hour of that is cutscenes, dialogue boxes, and the endless cosmetic unlock screens at the end of every stage. As you play the game, you'll get a bunch of cosmetic unlocks for your custom character. For example, this shiny green full-body latex gimp suit, which was one of the first items that I got. Really not helping the depiction of furries as deranged sexual deviants. But you'll also unlock new Wispons, weapons that your custom character can equip. Pretty much all the weapons are overpowered. You start with a flamethrower that shoots like 12 feet out and then just mows down everything in sight. But each weapon type also lets you interact with a specific color of wisp that appears in the levels. The red wisp lets you jump infinitely and skip huge chunks of stage. The yellow wisp lets you fly along ring paths and skip huge chunks of the stage. The drill wisp zooms you underground to skip huge chunks of the stage. The green wisp hovers to let you skip huge chunks of the stage. Are you starting to notice a pattern here? The cube wisp is kinda worthless since it just makes a platform under your feet while jumping, which none of the levels feel built to use, but the cube wisp as a weapon not only insta-kills everything in a pretty big radius, it showers you with an obscene number of rings. Which would be cool if rings actually did anything, which they don't. So every weapon either has a busted wisp power or a busted projectile attack, and several of the wisp powers just never appear in multiple levels just to pile more onto this batshit system. Lots of levels have branching paths, but unlike a good game like throw a rock at the Mario franchise, there aren't multiple exits that lead to hidden levels or secret unlockables. There are just multiple paths with nothing in them. And why would they do that? Well, every now and then an SOS mission will appear on the map and it will task you to find and break open a capsule of captive animals. Said capsule will randomly spawn on one of the random branching paths through the level, which you may or may not even be able to access unless you have randomly equipped exactly the right wisp to reach it, which the game will not tell you, and even if it is physically possible to reach the capsule, you'll still probably miss it because levels are designed to where it is impossible to backtrack. And even if, somehow, you find the damn capsule, you only get one life to do these missions. Reach the exit without the capsule or slip up and die from the physics, you fail the mission and it vanishes from the world map. And for all the damn trouble that you have to go through to actually complete an SOS mission, what's your reward for finishing one?
Nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Even worse, these damn worthless SOS missions are shoved down your throat, constantly filling up stages to where you can't just play your own avatar in a normal level. And several SOS levels force you to play another person's avatar, even though there's virtually no difference between the custom characters. But dumb missions, bad physics, restrictive levels, these are all unfortunately pretty old hat for the Sonic franchise and its long-suffering fan base. The part of forces that really peed in the soup of all the fans is the game's storyline. Well, what almost passes for a story anyway. So, Eggman conquered the world off-screen and you control a new resistance recruit. You've got a troubled past involving traumatic deaths, you don't talk much, and you don't have powers, but thanks to a grappling hook and a few gadgets, you manage to keep up with and completely upstage your super-powered allies and become instant best friends and close teammates with the world's greatest superhero. So, you play as Batman. Rouge has infiltrated Eggman's organization and finds out that Sonic is being kept alive on the Death Star. And luckily Knuckles already had you stealing a shuttle before he found out that you needed one to get to space.
Eggman's been keeping Sonic alive all this time. He's been waiting to show him his completed empire.
Well, it's not much, but at least Rouge has some good voice acting this time. But nothing compared to yours, babe. Estelle Ellis is the voice of an angel. So, of course, you bust Sonic out of prison a mere 15 minutes or so into the game, as Rouge again helps you out on the radio with such fantastic tidbits as this.
The prisoners are being held in a kind of internment facility.
Gee, thanks for telling me that the prisoners are in a prison, Rouge. Boomtails would be proud.
Look, ramps!
We can use these as ramps!
Anyway, the dialogue says multiple times that Sonic has been tortured for the last 6 months, so you better brace yourself to see Sonic battered, injured, his spirit in shambles, and utterly beaten to hell to break his...
Oh, hey, sounds like the party started. Want to let me go and join in? No? Of course not. You hate fun.
Oh, never mind. He's fine. He even leaps directly into a boss fight with that loser Eddie guy. I call the fight with Zavok a case study in why the homing attack sucks turd. Not only does it need about a full second to lock onto someone, but it only attacks if Sonic is staring directly at your target. So not only could I not hit any of the enemies that spawn in a full 360 circle, but the prompt to attack the boss kept failing to appear because I didn't have Sonic turned the right way. What the hell, man? Also, every time you get hit, the rings scatter about a mile away from you, so it's hard to pick any of them up and not get killed. The Death Egg then starts to blow up, which kinda worries me, because we can see there are a lot of prisoners watching the fight with Zavok who I think we just kinda left to die. It's mentioned several times in dialogue that Eggman was planning to, and I'm quoting directly here, exile Sonic into space, and he's been doing this for months to anybody who opposes him. So, has Eggman just flat-ass been murdering dozens to hundreds of innocent people by launching them into outer space unprotected? That is horrifying! Like, I'm against Sonic killing people as much as the next guy, but if Eggman is committing horrific war crimes on this grand of a scale, there is no way in hell this game should end with him breathing! So Sonic is back, but Tails is still MIA. Knuckles said that he's been completely losing his mind since Sonic was captured, so I sure hope that he's okay. It's going to be haunting to see a childhood icon so broken and lost without his best...
That should have done it. I couldn't figure it out for you, buddy. I'm sorry I wasn't smart enough.
Oh, never mind. He's fine. Again. Well, I say he's fine. He's subjected to the most infamous scene in the game.
Whoa! Chaos! Sonic, help me!
Ay, basura. This scene right here is basically the Sonic equivalent of Samus breaking down crying in front of Ridley in Metroid Other M. Tails took on Chaos 4 and Eggman Mechs solo in Sonic Adventure 1, could easily hang with Chaos Zero and any of the mains in Sonic Battle, and now he's cowering in fear of a bad guy he should have zero trouble taking on. Decades of character development straight down the crapper. This moment is so infamous that fans made a mod of Sonic 2 to mock it.
Sonic, help me! Sonic, help me! Sonic, help me!
Not gonna lie, it's pretty glorious. But luckily, Tails is saved by one of the biggest ass pulls in history. Retro Sonic from the Genesis games appears out of thin air for literally no damn reason. They try to say that he's here because Infinite can cross dimensions, which doesn't even slightly line up with how his powers work the rest of the game, and ignores that Retro Sonic was from back in time in Sonic Generations.
I mean, everything happens for a reason, right?
Yeah, that reason is bad writing! Retro Sonic gets a small handful of 2D stages that play vastly slower than the Genesis games they're trying to emulate, and he still has crappy jumping. But his stages do tend to be the best parts of the game. Low a bar as that is. One of the biggest problems that the game has is its tone. Sonic Forces is supposed to be this dramatic, war is hell narrative, with the heroes woefully outmatched and losing hope against such a merciless, massive, and powerful war machine. It's meant to be a desperate battle for sheer survival against a cold, unending force that they cannot hope to match, fighting for a world that may not even be around by the time the war's over, and rallying around Sonic as the last chance they have for a brighter future. And none of that carries over to the actual narrative. The darkest part of the story, Eggman conquering the planet while our heroes are helpless to stop him, is entirely skipped over through a text box, so any atmosphere is immediately shot to hell. Nobody acts like they're in a war. They're all upbeat and quippy like this is just a normal day of the week, and the tone matches that of a regular-ass Sonic game. You have exposition about how Eggman has mass-murdered tons of civilians and fellow soldiers by launching them to space, how Sonic's basically had to sit and watch helplessly as his world is destroyed, and it's followed 5 minutes later by this!
No way I'm sticking around here. There's nothing to run on. I don't do well in tight spaces. I'll pay back Eggman for putting me in this jam later.
Say what you will about Sonic Adventure 2 or Shadow the Hedgehog going dark with Technicolor talking animals, they commit to the dark tone. When bad shit happens, the writing, music, and voice work give it the gravitas that it deserves. Versus Sonic Forces, where all the good guys get slaughtered off-screen multiple times, and nobody blinks. Tone-deaf half-measures like this are the difference between dark and stupid, between serious and cringe-inducing, between Aliens and Alien Resurrection. Anyway, the game just kinda meanders aimlessly with no story whatsoever for a pretty long time. You wander around random locations fighting Eggman and his goons with no sense of continuity. You get into a fight with Infinite, and there's some admittedly cool show-don't-tell moments with his powers where he seems to be able to warp reality, but he's got no backstory or motivation. He's just a guy with generic villain lines. And when you beat him, he says, "I could easily kill you now, but that would be cheating, okay, bye!" 10 levels in, Tails is still moaning that his Sonic is dead because none of those jackasses in the Resistance bothered to call him on the phone and tell him Sonic's fine, I guess.
You let the hedgehog live? That is a great source of concern!
For you, perhaps. He has beaten you for decades.
Wait! Decades?! In-universe, Sonic has been fighting Eggman for a bare minimum of 20 years? So the dude's at least in his 30s, probably in his 40s? That one line shatters any suspension of disbelief these games might have had! And in Sonic Heroes Manual, it said yours was like 10 or so years older. Does that mean you're like in your 50s or 60s?
Rouge, I've been looking for you.
Little help here, please. Talking. Thanks for the help, Miles. So, you want to help out with Sonic Forces?
Why, sure, I would love to play with Rouge, who's actually still in video games.
Oh, wow, yeah, in Sonic Forces. That's a real step up. Crystal was in Smash Ultimate. Eggman wants to blow up the world to build over it. Infinite gets his powers from something called the Phantom Ruby that, no, they never explain what in the hell it is or what it does. And after a boss fight of hucking rocks at Eggman, he brags that in 3 days he'll conquer the world because Sonic Heroes is still popular, right? The Avatar is sent to destroy a factory, but just kind of forgets that to bum around a city. Retro Sonic gets a casino stage that sucks because the physics make it nigh impossible to play the piddly small minigames. And then the Avatar finds Tails and Retro Sonic in a water slide level where you barely friggin' do anything and the physics are so badly designed that you fall right off the edge of the slide non-friggin' stop with no chance to save yourself!
You're the meaning in my life. You're the inspiration.
It's been generations since I've seen you.
Now I know that you are eager for adventure, and I will lead you in adventure to battle! We have a great many heroes here, even if we are still missing Shadow the Hedgehog, but now that there are more than 06 of us, we stand a chance! We will conquer Eggman, and the Secret Rings, and the Black Knight! He will not stand a chance against us unleashed, and our colors will fly across this lost world! And there will be a rise of lyrics written of this day, when our forces spread freedom across all the frontiers! Sonic goes to fight Shadow, only for him to get killed by the real Shadow. Apparently the villains are actually energy construct clones made by Infinite, but I'm more concerned with the little question of, where the fuck has Shadow been the last 6 months? Dude's at least as powerful as Sonic. Silver is too, for that matter, but oh no, the Resistance is utterly doomed unless Sonic and only Sonic comes back to save us. Asshole! Knuckles just decides to take the entire army and just charge headlong on Eggman's base in Metropolis. No, really, it's called Metropolis. And the entire Resistance gets slaughtered by Infinite because this game can't pick a damn tone and stick with it!
80% of our forces have been wiped out, and we've lost contact with the rest.
This is probably the only cool level in the game, though, since Infinite shows up to screw with gravity. And then you kick Infinite's ass again, and he runs away feebly going, "You only won 'cause I lost! I could totally kill you, I just don't feel like it!" This guy sucks! Then you fight Metal Sonic, who's piss easy, dodge a few attacks way in advance, and homing attack him to death. Retro Sonic goes to a blatant rehash of the chemical plant levels in Sonic 2 to gather intel, and then for the last whole third of its runtime, the game kinda develops an actual plot finally. Infinite's powers come from using the Phantom Ruby to control virtual reality, which is how he's able to twist the world whenever you fight him. No, really. Infinite's powers to conjure and alter matter at his will come from virtual reality technobabble, like this was pulled straight out of the 90s. When Neil Breen knows what VR is more than you do, you have screwed up! Tails figures out that Infinite is being powered by the Death Egg, so they send the Avatar to dick around a city as a distraction while the Sonics blow up the Death Egg. Again, really hope that someone actually went to rescue all those prisoners that we saw. The heroes charge headlong into Eggman's base again, but Eggman had a backup power source for the Phantom Ruby that Tails somehow missed, so this was all a huge waste of time. Infinite pulls a new power out of his ass and traps Sonic and the Avatar in a limbo dimension called Null Space. For all of 5 seconds, they just run straight out of it before a level where you basically just charge a rail for 2 minutes. Now, even though Eggman directly told everyone where the backup power source for the Phantom Ruby is, Nobody ever mentions maybe attacking it to depower the Reality Infinity Stone. Instead, the last 5 levels, the whole Resistance just bum rushes Eggman's headquarters again. This is the 3rd or 4th time we've tried this, and it always ends badly! Infinite uses virtual reality to crash the sun into the planet, which doesn't immediately kill everyone, but the Avatar has a prototype Phantom Ruby and stops it.
The sun! It's gone!
Pause! What the shit is that? And after they flat-ass recycle Metal Sonic's boss fight, Infinite just friggin' disappears! Dead serious, the main villain is just gone from the story now. Dude's never mentioned again. Infinite's own game has stopped giving a shit about him. This is as good a time as any to point out that those 4 classic Sonic villains that they showed at the start of the game, yeah, you never fight Shadow or Chaos. Chaos doesn't even have any actual code in the game, period, suggesting that they never planned on using him in the first place. Eggman has the Phantom Ruby now because shut up, and he puts it into a Death Egg robot for the final boss. First, they recycle Retro Sonic's boss fight because they had no ideas for mechanics other than making Eggman gargle Sonic's balls. Then the Avatar recycles Zavek's boss fight, only Eggman insta-kills you by punching the floor out with no warning. And then they recycle the final boss from Sonic Colors, which sucked to begin with because you can barely dodge attacks and it's pure luck to recover rings! The robot blows up, the Phantom Ruby blows up, Eggman just kind of vanishes out of nowhere so we can commit mass genocide another day, and everyone just kind of goes home. After the credits, your avatar leaves the group to help those in need that Sonic can't be arsed with, and to keep the canon nice and tidy.
A single person cannot restore the entire world.
Yeah, kind of full of shit on that when the entire Resistance hinged entirely on Sonic because the rest of you are useless. My favorite part of the ending is that part of the reward for finishing the final stage is a void weapon that draws in enemies to damage them. Your grand reward for beating the game is something that sucks. So fitting. Sonic Force's story is pretty terrible. It wants a dark tone as an overcorrection to complaints about the happy-go-lucky colors in Lost World, but Forces doesn't do squat to commit to its tone. Everyone except Sonic and your OC is infuriatingly useless if you follow the series at all. The villain is completely forgettable and makes up new powers on the spot, and the so-called plot pretty much boils down to bum rush Eggman until it works. And you know what makes the game's story even worse? Loads of the game's story is in supplemental material and never friggin' explained in-game. Infinite does have a backstory and personality. Part of it's in the Shadow DLC that you are never told about, and the rest of the backstory is in the comics. But specifically the Sonic Saturday Morning comics, not the completely separate Sonic Archie comics, even though neither have ever been connected to any of the games before. And the Phantom Ruby, upon which literally the entire story revolves, that comes from the game Sonic Mania. So if you skipped the fan-made side game that, again, was unconnected to the main series, then you're going to be completely lost as to what in the hell is going on. And even if you did play Mania, the Phantom Ruby apparently works differently between the two games, and how in the hell are there prototype rubies for the Avatar to steal? Omega showing up out of nowhere in the climax? That's payoff for the tie-in comics where he got warped to show how tough Infinite is. And some of this shit you have to go meta to explain. Those lines of dialogue about how Sonic was tortured for 6 months and Tails went cuckoo while Sonic was gone, even though both of them turn up fine. Yeah, those lines were added in the game's English translation. You were apparently supposed to just know to research the original Japanese version of the game so that you would know to ignore a few really specific plot points. You're also supposed to instinctively know to research the leaked early script for the game that explains Retro Sonic's presence. Oh, and speaking of that leaked script, turns out the climax was originally going to include a fight with Mephiles. Mephiles! As in the villain of Sonic 06 that had literally been erased from history by Game's End! Why?! Oh, and how is the Shadow DLC? It's short, like the rest of the game! Shadow's campaign is a piddly 3 levels long, maybe 10 minutes of actual content. One of the levels is shamelessly carbon copied out of the main campaign, and the other 2 are depressingly much better designed than the main levels are. It takes place a month before the main story. Shadow attacks an Eggman base, he runs into Infinite, and they go home! That's it! No explanation of why Shadow was MIA for 6 months and half the campaign. No explanation for why he didn't warn anybody about Infinite. No explanation of how he, Rouge, and Omega are still secret agents when Gun doesn't exist in this universe. And it just cuts off out of nowhere with 0 resolution. Literally, the only purpose to this expansion is laying out Infinite's backstory, which, brace yourself for this crap! Infinite was a mercenary who lost a fight with Shadow, and then his pee-pee hurt, so he whines that he's going to become the most powerfulest guy ever because he's crying about this one fight! I am so not even kidding!
I'm not weak. I am not weak.
That has to be the pettiest, most pathetic backstory for a villain that I've heard in a while, and that's not even the worst part. You want to know why Infinite wears a mask? Guess! No, really, take your best guess. The supervillain with ultimate reality warping superpowers wears a mask because Shadow called him ugly. Again, I am dead serious.
Don't show your pathetic face around me ever again.
I gave up my own unsightly face.
Infinite went from being forgettable as they come to being a laughing stock. Oh, and the Supersonic DLC? It does basically nothing. Supersonic gives you infinite boost, which doesn't do crap in a lot of the side-scroller stages, and it makes you immune to damage, but not to falls, which is the one thing that you actually need. Hell, you want to know just how useless this DLC power-up is? Supersonic can still drown! But at least the Shadow and Supersonic DLCs are free. Now! Sega wanted to charge money for them, but fans were so pissed off at the game's everything that Sega was browbeaten into giving them away for free. There is not much replay value to Sonic Forces either. Once you finish the game, you can create new custom characters, and you're pretty much expected to replay the entire game about 6 times to unlock all the crappy cosmetics. Oh hey, you can make a rabbit avatar! I didn't say I was gonna! To be fair, each species that you can create has a different special ability to change up the game, but to be fair, most of them blow ass! The bird can double jump, barely. The bear blows enemies away if you homing attack enemies, which you never will except for platforming, and the hedgehog makes dropped rings stick around longer when you get hit, the same rings that scatter so far that you'll never pick them up anyway. But then you have the wolf, which has a permanent magnet shield effect that draws in rings, and the most broken of all, the cat, who will always hold onto a ring when they take damage, meaning that unless you screw up hard, you're basically immune to attacks. I really should have just listened to you from the start. I'll never doubt you again. Can you ever forgive me? I did eventually find out that if you collect a bunch of red rings, you unlock extra levels, except red rings are a pain in the ass. You blaze right past them and can't backtrack. If you spot them at all for the damn branching paths, you have to replay the same level dozens of times to get the damn things. And I played the first extra level. It was basically just, we stole the Lakitus from Mario, and I couldn't beat it. Not because it's hard, but because you come to a series of narrow platforms and the physics and controls are so stiff and broken that I can't freaking clear a few basic jumps! Bite me! I'm done! Sonic Forces is such a blah game. You barely do anything thanks to restrictive, overly linear level design. The gameplay brings nothing new to the table. It's threadbare in its content unless you resort to cheap grinding, and there's no reason to grind because its main feature, a custom character, isn't designed in any way to make you give a rat's ass. I haven't had such bad writer's block in years as trying to come up with something to say about Sonic Forces. Yeah, it's bad, but it's bad from problems that the series had already been suffering from for several years by this point. I've been sliding into pits on accident left and right since Heroes, dealt with stiff controls in Secret Rings and Black Knight, and 06 is the king of underbaked and confusing tone-deaf stories. I hated Lost World 06, Rise of Lyric, and Sonic Unleashed more than I hated this, but that doesn't make Forces good by comparison. It just makes Forces forgettable. At least the damn thing is short, so that it just flicks in and out of your brain without leaving any major damage. Last year saw the release of Sonic Frontiers, which has also been met with widespread division, but at least a lot of people seem to think that it's a legitimately good game, versus the discussion of Forces being around how many titles it's worse than. We'll get to Frontiers eventually. It won't be next, though. I've got some more Kinect to catch up on.